1 second. This is about to setting up the YouTube broadcast. I always need to remember to mute the window on my laptop so I don't hear myself. Okay, all right. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, good evening. It is Thursday, November 17th. This is ANC 5D's public meeting of their Zoning and Development Committee. Hope everybody's doing okay. We'll try to keep this meeting short and sweet to about an hour. Let me share my screen. Try to do a real quick agenda. How do I do this here? Share screen. I'm just going to share. I'm going to actually just share the entire screen. How do I do this? Oh, it's not aligned. I'm just going to share the PowerPoint. Has happened before where the website it doesn't allow me to share my entire screen, which is actually a lot handier. But
go into
I'll figure it out later. Not that important.
Okay.
Okay, so the agenda for tonight's meeting is we're going to give a real quick 10-minute update on Zoning Commission Case 22-21. Then we're going to give a quick update on the Pepco substation site for 10 minutes. Then we're going to move to a deck review for one of our neighbors who lives on Trinidad Ave. And they have a deck project they're planning on doing. And I just wanted, I knew we would have at least one of the architects would be present for the meeting. And if they can maybe, and we can have them show some pictures. If there's any concerns that they might have from a building code perspective, any recommendations that would be appreciated. And then we have a presentation, and I'm not sure how long they need, but I assumed 30 minutes from the Union Market Infrastructure Corp. So let me jump into ZC 2221. And before I get into it, I'm going to just show this screen here. This is a zoning commission case. This is for the northeast corner of Carver Langston. It's up by, this is Maryland Ave, northeast. Yeah, just go to presentation mode so you see it. Maybe you see it larger on the screen.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you. You need to go into.
Yeah. So this is Maryland Ave northeast. And there are two buildings right here, 229M. I think this is 225. I'm not sure. I think that's the address here. And there is a PUD planned. This neighborhood is zoned residential apartment 2. And there's a PUD to upzone these to RA4 to build a, I think, 8-story plus penthouse. So I think that takes it up. I think the total.
Oh, and basement. And basement.
Sure. And it'd be like 96 feet, 120 units, and so that has been proposed. And their zoning commission hearing is, why is this not?
22nd of December.
Is December 22nd. The ANC has concerns about this, and they've mostly with the massing of the building. They think it's just too large, and that is Commissioner Moore. There was a vote actually just last Tuesday to not support this project. I believe, I'm not sure if the ANC report has been submitted yet into the case record. If not, it will be soon. Next door neighbors have started to reach out to us with their concerns. There is one building. One thing that's a little unusual about this project is that, if you see, this won't let me zoom in, but I'm going to show this view here. There is, to the right of these buildings, there's a building here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The building that was formerly known as Victoria Styles Hair and Makeup, that has been renovated. But the next 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings are all under construction right now as we speak. And I think I've got a panoramic view. So that building has been renovated. This building here is one of the 2 buildings that are for the planned PUD. This building is fully renovated. This building, only the front remains. That's it's been demoed, probably under construction. So this building here, we believe it's 6 units to be confirmed. I don't yet know what the building permits on this are calling it out for B. This is in progress. sorry, this one, the building permits, I just walked down the street and you could look at the building permits and tell you the number of units. This is going to be 14 units, 11 units, 9 units. And I just learned that the corner building here has been sold. So one of our concerns is that the transportation study that was performed by the applicant was performed in June. And this is actually, if you just go on Google Street View, you can see in June, this is what the site, it's when they performed their transportation study to look at the amount of parking, there's none of the buildings were occupied. Most of the buildings in the street were not occupied. So how can you get a good understanding of what the parking conditions will be 6 months from now when these buildings are actually are completed and we've got new neighbors moved in? It's just something not correct there. And actually, when I was over there this evening, snapping pictures, someone came up in the building, was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I explained, and he told me even in the mornings there can be parking issues. I think this side of the street's generally okay to park on, but he says, because there's a lot of density around here, and a lot of the neighbors who live here actually park their cars over here. So we just think that once these buildings all come online, there may not be anywhere near the amount of parking that is being used to justify the proposed building. So anyway, the ANC's asked us to dig into, the developers also submitted a detailed transportation study into the case record just back on November 9th. We're going to take a look at that to see if there are any other concerns. There might be some assumptions with the bus. Skip, did you have any comments? I know you had already started to look at that. Did you have any concerns, comments?
Well, I have a few questions, yes. The bus stuff, well, the first one, well, you've covered that. The shuttle bus that's proposed, where would that actually go? It's not mentioned in the transportation study. Would it be going over to what's now the Starburst Plaza? I'm asking that because that section is probably going to be under redevelopment sometime in the next year or two. And the buses, the X2 is not, the X2 is mentioned as running only once, but in actual fact, it runs on Benning. It only goes up, I think it's 26th Street once a day because of the school. But the bus itself is on Benning. The streetcar is not mentioned at all. The bicycle stuff is interesting, but there's no dates of when the stuff would actually be there.
Yeah, I mean, they're leaning a lot on bicycles. I should mention, this is senior housing. This is to be built for 65 and older. So
55, I believe, actually.
Is it 55?
I think it's 55.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. And by the way, we have,
one other thing is that the pedestrian, it's one of the maps in, I think it's the fourth upload, shows the fact that the curb cuts are missing at 22nd and Maryland Avenue. That's not the only problem with that crosswalk. The other problem with that crosswalk is not only is the curb cut on the north side missing, but so is the connector between the curb and the pavement. It's just grass. So if someone has a wheelchair, even if the curb cut's there, they still won't be able to get to the sidewalk. So just putting that out there. I'm not certain who's responsible for that, but it is shown in their study. So I'm mentioning it.
So, and something I should mention is in the past 2 weeks, I have been speaking with some of the seniors who live at Fortitude at Delta Towers, the senior housing building that's at the Starburst intersection, just to understand through their eyes what kind of amenities are important for them. Because that's literally, that is their demographic. That's who this new building proposed is meant for. And I know they have a lot of concerns about the size of half the units are 370, 380 square foot studios. And I can tell you the seniors over in Fortitude Delta are actually pretty upset because they moved down from a 650 square foot, 1-bedroom units to 500 square foot. And they felt suddenly all kinds of usable storage and space they had was gone. They have closets where they can't even hang a coat hanger without it being at an angle. Like, it just seemed that was like a bridge too far to go down, and they seemed pretty unhappy with the size. And when I mentioned that there was a proposal for 370 square foot, they seemed extremely upset that people would try to house seniors. They felt it was generally pretty disrespectful. So, there's not a lot of public feedback in the case record, but I think that might change soon, because it came up the last ANC meeting, and a lot of the seniors at that building asked me, "Hey, how do we, what do we do about this?" So I will be following back up with them, just so they understand there is a process where if you think this, then the community deserves better senior housing. We know we need more senior housing. We need more housing, but it needs to be respectful senior housing. So if anyone has any questions, you can email us at anc5dzoning@gmail.com. We're putting up a quick kind of how to, if you want to participate in that, just as a neighbor, and you want to submit a letter into the case record, and you can say, "Hey, I don't request this, or I would like to see this change." There is a process, and I'm writing up a how to, because actually so a lot of the seniors over there asked me to do it. So the BZA and zoning commission cases can be a little esoteric, and it's a little confusing how to do stuff, but it's actually not, it's not difficult, but I'm going to write up a little kind of an easy fact to inform people how to do that. But I want to keep on schedule here. Next thing does anyone who's online have any questions about this project, the zoning commission case? I don't want to skip too far in case anyone has joined specifically to talk about this.
Well, as mentioned, I'm very concerned also about the parking, or what will probably become the lack of. If you look at some of the maps, a lot of that area is already red, which means that in the evening, more than 90% of the spaces available already have cars in them.
Yeah.
And that's before any of these buildings that are now on the screen are even finished.
And the developer has proposed 120 units and 8 resident parking spaces.
Correct.
And for comparison, Delta Towers has 179 units, but they have a large underground parking garage, 60 units, 60 parking spaces that are all filled up with a waiting list. So we're seeing about 30% occupancy rate for the parking at Delta Towers. These guys I don't understand. I think there's issues with the massing. But anyway, I want to keep moving on. Next on the agenda was the Pepco substation site. So for those who don't know, and I think I want to here's a map of Trinidad, kind of a zoomed out zoning map of Trinidad. And in the north, kind of middle corner, there's Penn Street Northeast. And this is called Holbrook Terrace, but it kind of loops around. And actually behind these loop houses here on Penn Street, there's an old Pepco substation that has been probably here as long as the houses were here. And this substation is, as of right now, demolished. So that's a view as of this past weekend. So they've demolished this site, and Representative from Pepco not testified, but he spoke to the ANC last Tuesday, Mr. Jamal Jordan, and we're just trying to find out, like, okay, what are you doing next? And and by the way, this lot, so you can see, just eyeballing it, the red here is the actual Pepco building. The lot's about 5,400 square feet. So the question is, what are you doing with it? Pepco's plans to do with this lot is, as soon as they finish demolishing this, they're going to demolish this, they're going to remove all of the old concrete, they will be left with soil, and they're going to put, even though it's not a right time of the year, they're required to prevent soil and dust runoff, they're going to put sod down. So at the end of December, they're going to put a bunch of sod down, so it can probably immediately freeze and die, but at least it won't be dusty. But that's their plan. And then they're going to transfer this site to their disposition team, where it will be sold. And we don't have anything more. They themselves don't know anything more. And I know a lot of the neighbors around here are concerned, like, what might happen here, what might go in. And a lot of kind of hard to see, but a lot of the houses here, they don't have very deep back, they can get their car in there, but a lot of the backyards here are just fully concreted over. So I think there are some neighbors who might be interested in this becoming maybe a community green space. At this point, I'm going to say, I'm sure there's some neighbors have dialed in because I actually asked some people to spread the word of this meeting. And I see I've got a hand raised. Michelle, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for holding this meeting. I'm here with my husband, Rob. We are homeowners in that space. The back of our house looks down onto that building, or what was the building. And so since we're here, we wanted to put a plug in for some community green space to be put back there. You have to walk a few blocks to get to any sort of green space in the neighborhood. So I think it would be a really nice asset for community building in our neighborhood, as well as hopefully mitigating some environmental damage by having, proper absorption of rain and that sort of thing.
I'd also add that there is already a parking crisis in this area with the number of residents that there are. So the vision here of the concreted over backyards where people park their cars belies the fact that many of these units are becoming 2-unit residences, as many of you know, and that has led to an issue where, yes, there's supposed to be a parking spot for each of those units, but many people have 2 or 3 cars. We have a neighbor over here that I think has 4 cars and brings his delivery truck from work and parks it outside as well. So any additional density of living space here, also mark that against the inaccessibility to just basic stuff. Yes, we have a little corner market down the way that's been given a little bit of money to renovate, and that's nice, but you have to go quite a ways to get anything else. And I don't think we want to encourage more residents. We're already a pretty dense neighborhood without enough services to be able to, amenities to supply the need. Thank you.
Okay. And Eric?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm on 1264, so we're right on the corner of this, and we have thought about what this Pepco station could be for about 12 years that we've been here. And yeah, I think that I attended the initial hearing that I forget his name, but the Pepco rep, who basically said, yeah, that they're planning to sell it, and then that whoever buys it, and that it may be zoned already potentially for up to 2 units, is what I was told. And I agree with Michelle and her husband that additional kind of density, especially in that alleyway that already has some accessibility even to get to it issues. There's oftentimes that the cars are blocking certain spaces already, and the idea of adding a permanent residential space in there seems like it would cause a lot of problems. And I agree, something like a community green space, some kind of community garden, I think would be a really wonderful way to make that space that has been a part of our community for so long still a part of it. And I kind of join that a residential space there would be very unwise, in my opinion.
Gotcha. I can tell you something about the zoning. What would happen to the site? Now I can send out an email. There is, because I went looking for other precedents of other recent alley lot developments. And there was a Board of Zoning Adjustment case down near C Street Northeast, which is also neighborhood zoned RF1. And now there was a much easier to develop rectangular lot. And I wish I could just share my whole screen. It's allowing, for some reason, Zoom is allowing me to share an app, but not just my whole desktop. And Rachel, I see your hand and I will get you. I just want to explain how the zoning works is if a developer buys this, they will file a zoning case to split the lot up into new zones. So into new lots. So yes, the matter of right is you can build, I think, just one I think it's just one lot, one dwelling unit per alley lot, but they can just
That's right.
split up this lot that you see here. See if I can go back in, if I can, wrong area. Yeah, this is, sorry, my computer's acting up. They can split this lot up into multiple, there could be a version where all of the neighbors who lived here, there's like 5 houses, they could technically buy the lot and then do a zoning case and give themselves backyards, or it could be a community green space. Like you can change the lot, and that's what happened down in the other BZA case. I'll try to put it into the chat and a link. The BZA case was 20716, but if you go onto Google and you just Google BZA case search, you'll probably get to the Office of Zoning's case case thing. And if you put in 20716, that's the BZA case record for that. And that was a 10,000 square foot, but it was like almost a perfectly rectangular lot, and it was very easy for them. And they chopped it into 6 smaller lots. And that there was some interesting information in that case record, because they even talked about how expensive it would be to run utilities, water and sewer. And there's a lot of upfront cost to doing that. So that might be something that helps in your favor. It's a kind of an odd triangular lot. So how many units can you build here? And if you can't build a lot of units, it may not justify the expense just to get utilities and services into the lot. But again, I'm not a developer. I have no idea what it's going to cost. But if enough neighbors want to do this as a community, it's probably something you're going to want to band together. I see, Rachel, you have your hand raised.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for the explanation. So I'm Rachel Mueller. I am in 1277, so I'm just down the street from Michelle and Eric and Rob. So I don't want to repeat the things that they've already said. I think that everyone on this street would much rather see it as some sort of green space, community garden, dog park, whatever it is that the community could take advantage of and use. Especially given the location. I think that the only other things I wanted to add were, one, a question just in terms of any additional information. I appreciate the BZA case information, but any additional information or guides that you could give us to kind of let us know like what our options would be. I think it would be very difficult for a few neighbors to outbid a developer. I know, I've done some development work myself at a law firm here in DC, and I know like how difficult that can be in terms of, purchasing it, but how we could logistically ever actually prevent this from becoming residences. Again, as several neighbors have pointed out, the parking issue is already an issue. My backyard, for instance, cannot be converted into a parking spot without a substantial financial commitment, because my backyard is actually 4 feet off the alley. And so I'd have to remove a retaining wall that holds up my house in order to make it a parking spot, and lose the green space that I do have in my yard, which I'm not interested in doing. But this lot is not actually close to a street. Like if you look at it, it is in the alley, and the closest street is Owen, but Owen currently only is technically, I believe, supposed to be parked on one side.
Yeah.
So you're going quite a ways before even.
I have more pictures. I'm going to see if I can get Zoom just to allow me to share my entire screen, because I walked through there this weekend taking pictures, and there's actually, it's not evident from the pictures, there's a pretty extreme grade. If you're up the hill, then you look down, you're almost looking at the roofs across the other side of the lot. So I think the site definitely poses some development challenges, which might be to your benefit if the goal is for community green space, because it may just not be economically feasible. I see Commissioner Rose. I see lots of hands up, but let me go to Commissioner Rose.
Yes, I had mentioned to, I think it was Jamal at the ANC meeting about, because it's a PEPCO substation, did they do any environmental impact research on it as far as DOE is concerned? So as a community, that would be a good idea, first of all, to make sure that that area is safe and doesn't have any kind of toxic soil or anything in the area. Because if they want to build over top of it, That doesn't make any sense, especially if the area is not safe. And you want to make sure if you want green space or urban garden, that you want to make sure that it's environmentally safe. So as a
Okay.
community, that's how you will begin that process to kind of halt the developers.
Well, I think commission, that's, Pepco is owning that task. I mean, what they're saying, I actually spoke with Mr. Jordan just yesterday. Like, that is what they're doing that right now. And there are procedures, and, you know, when this is done, I'm quite sure the district is going to come in and make sure that, like, you know, my guess is when they built that brick building, maybe there's lead paint on the inside. They're planning on leaving this in a condition that it can be sold and used by anybody. It'll be a grass, it'll be clear, it will look nice, my guess, the day they put the sod on it. And actually, you know, maybe that might serve as some inspiration. I see we've got a couple more hands raised.
One
Michelle,
thing I have noticed when I've walked over in that neck of the woods, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be a somewhat lack of trees in some certain areas. That might be something that you could talk to the city that might help also, because they're trying to encourage more green space. Tree cover can help lower temperatures. So I'm just thinking that, you know, that might help weigh more toward your community garden arrangement.
Yeah. I would say one thing that would, it would be all the neighbors, you'll definitely get, I think it's probably, you'll have to like band together, have a group. I think the newly elected Ward 5 council member,
Zachary
Parker, we're going to reach out to him. It might be something where the district steps in to buy the land. But again, this has to be something that people are, you know, squeaky wheel gets the oil. So this might be something where if enough of you are saying, hey, we would like this. And I mean, no one's asking Pepco to take a bath on this or to not achieve the full economic value of the sale. It's just that what makes most sense? Like, should this become, I mean, it is not a large lot and it's a very irregularly shaped lot. So, you know, I think there is an opportunity to have a community benefit that everyone benefits from, especially a lot of the houses around that don't have large backyards. If there was a nice green space, that would, you know, as opposed to, you know, I'm not sure how many units you could fit on that irregular size lot. But I see Joey, Liberi, your hand is raised.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Yeah, I'm Joey. My family and I, we live on Owen Place. We actually back up directly to the site. We're at 1270. And so I support everyone's thoughts so far about a community green space. The way my family and I think about it, though, I'd want to make sure we're thoughtful about what process, and certainly if we decide or if a community green space goes in that location, that we are thoughtful on what kind of traffic we invite into that space. So for the residents like myself that back directly to that space, you know, if we're inviting a lot of folks that it's getting a lot of traffic during the day, like and for example, a dog park. I mean, I have a dog, that would be great. That would be wonderful. But just to be thoughtful a little bit about the kind of space we're putting back there, if we're inviting public traffic, foot traffic back there. Also, one of the things we've thought about is, as much as we too would enjoy community space, we'd want to make sure we're thoughtful about how it's policed, the lighting that's available in the area. There's lots of areas in Trinidad that are difficult places to go by, especially those areas where there's large sort of just open areas to congregate. And we'd want, you know, we'd certainly want to be a part of that discussion as a community going forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think I share your concern. Like, if it's, you know, there are examples of community gardens in the neighborhood that have tall fences around them, so people can come and use it, but it's not fully accessible, and there's like key codes and stuff like that. So it's not as public as folks would like, but it is perhaps something that people can get involved in. It doesn't all have to be, you know, garden plots and vegetables and flowers, you know, but you know, is this something that DPR, you know, right now in the evenings, they close and lock the gates around Joe Cole Rec Center. So is that the kind of model, you know, and I don't know the answer to this question, and all these things require extra budgets, but if DPR is coming through, is that something where if there was a community space, it would after hours get locked up. Like there's a lot to figure out here. What's going to make the most sense. I see, Michelle, your hand is still up.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Are you aware of any precedent in DC where Pepco has sold land to DC government for the purpose of creating a green space?
I'm personally not, because I'm as new to this as you are. I learned about like 2 weeks ago. So, and we're all just trying to like racing right now to catch up. I think that's a question we could, Mr. Jordan from Pepco has been pretty forthcoming. And so I think I could ask him that question. We could also reach out to some of the other ANCs, just to see who else has, I believe the ANC commissioners have got a commissioner group that can talk to. So, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer to it, but I think there's going to be a lot of neighbors, and I think you guys would probably need to start a Google group and just start, just literally start a Google group talking about this and organize and be squeaky and just try to figure out. And I think the ANC will, represents you. So I'm not sure who. I think Commissioner Cobb is the commissioner of this area. So I know he's in, because of his employment at Housing and Urban Development, he's not allowed to vote on zoning development issues, but I know he does care about this. And I think it's probably half the reason he ran for commissioner a few years back, is he really wants to see something good happen to the site. I see a question from Rachel. Yeah, great. I see people putting their email addresses into the chat. Please, that's fantastic. Please do that. All right, I know there's a lot of focus on this, but I do want to be respectful of folks' time. And we did have another issue we want to jump to, which has to do with a backyard deck project. Joey, were you lowering your hand, or were you done?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I can't get to the chat to be able to put in my email address. And I don't know if that's because I'm not a panel member or not. So if there was a way to do that, thank you.
Is there, Joey? Oh, let me promote you to, how do I do this? Promote you to panelist.
Also, Spencer has his hand raised too.
He does.
Yeah, likewise, I missed out on joining as a participant or panelist, so you can join the chat.
I'll promote you right now. So hopefully you should just got a notice to, there you go. So everyone's a panelist. I think there is a chance that if you join late, you don't see the previous questions in the chat. So Spencer, do you see people's email addresses in the chat, or is it currently empty?
It's currently empty, but that could be because I just rejoined.
Yeah, I think it's weird. You think it would show all of the past chats, and it doesn't. So
that's fine. I can just add my email address, and if someone can kindly.
Yeah, please do that. Drop yours in there, and yep, I see it. Perfect. I see Joey's. Yeah, all of you, seriously, and I will do, like, honestly, this is kind of stuff why we started the zoning committee, was to help our neighbors. So I think you're going to find we're going to be. Let me put mine here. Well, let me put my ANC5 zone Gmail. Let me just put my personal, because you know what, I care about this. We all want to do this. So include me in. If you guys start up a group to, or just a group email thread, include me there. Okay. Is there any final questions, comments on this before I move on to the next item? Isn't? Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda was a discussion on a backyard, and I don't actually have any slides to show there. I assume, hey, there's Stephanie. I see you're here. Did you want to discuss your project?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I'll keep this brief. My name is Stephanie. I live at 1405 Trinidad. And I'm actually just at the start of a project and don't have any drawings to show, but that's because when I learned that our deck project might need a special exception, I wanted to pause and get some guidance. And that's when I reached out to Kevin, who suggested I join this meeting. So just a really quick overview. Currently at the back of my home, there's a set of old stairs down to a parking pad. We'd like to replace those stairs, which are worn, and add new ones, and build a modest deck. Yes, yep, thank you.
I hope I walked through this week. I was like, I hope no one comes out and think I'm creeping around. But I always find it's very helpful to walk a site so I can get context for what people are asking.
Yes, thank you. So we've spoken with a few contractors and architects about building a deck that would extend about 10 feet. And this would take, as we understand it, our lot occupancy to about 67, 68%. Which we understand we need a special exception from BZA to do this, since that would take us over 60% lot occupancy. And then after that, a permit from the city. Kevin let me know that this project seems similar to one that BZA approved recently at 1274 Oates, which is good to hear. But that's where I am, hoping this group might be able to give me any guidance on what my next step should be.
I do have one question. I see the door down below that opens directly. Is that a separate unit, or is that part of your home?
That's part of my home. That enters into like a washer dryer room.
Okay. The reason I was asking is, from what I have read, they are less likely to grant if it's going to block someone else's daylight.
Got it.
If that is part of your home, then you get what I'm getting at? Kevin?
Yeah.
And Stephanie, is your house considered a single family, or is it a 2-family? Is this like a separately metered unit, or what's the?
It's considered single family.
Okay, that probably makes it good. All right, and I have a question for Marshall, who's our architect. Is anyone going to complain? Are any of these? Maybe it's for Stephanie. Are any of these considered fire egress? Are there any bedrooms down here where the city might care that this gets covered up by something? These windows here, these basement windows.
Sorry, is that a question for me?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I kind of started asking Marshall, and then I realized I need to confirm with you first. Are any of these bedroom windows, are these fire egress windows here?
So that enters into a laundry mudroom. Behind that is, there's like a kitchen and a bedroom down there. Again, it's part of we don't rent it as like a separate unit. So I don't know how the city would treat that.
Okay. So Marshall, do you have any concerns from like building code perspective? Like if she proposes a deck to cover the entire rear?
I mean, you're not, there's no code that says you can't have a deck over a window. Even if it's an egress, I still don't think it would restrict it.
Okay.
But, just as from a usage point of view, you wouldn't want to obviously block the door or the windows. I imagine the door probably is part of the egress path. If it's not a bedroom, then the windows wouldn't be considered, need the window for egress. And structurally, it's considered a separate structure, really, a deck. So it's not, from a structural point of view, it doesn't matter. But next steps would, if you want to go above that 60% number, then you do need that special exception. So setting up a BZA case to do that would be sort of the next steps. That there's no real way around that except for to go under that 60% number.
Marshall, is there anything where if you're just barely over it, can you get a letter from the zoning administrator? Like if the ANC was to support it, or does she have to go through the BZA process? Like, did they always make you go through even if you're like 62% or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know of any. I don't think there's a way to shortcut it. No, because I mean that's if there were, then it would kind of question the whole point of having the zoning rules.
Okay.
There's something I'm noticing in the photo here. The property to the left, and this is a question for Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Are your houses, are they the same distance in the sense of, do the walls align? Because if they do, your next door neighbor already has a deck from the look of it.
Our house goes back a little bit further than hers.
You mean it comes toward the alley a little bit more?
Yes. Our home extends a little closer to the alley than her home. If you not
Okay,
counting.
because they're looking like they're roughly the same in the photo. I can see on the other side, it's definitely extended out from your neighbor to the right.
Yep.
Okay.
So Stephanie, I don't think, I've seen the ANC support, and again, we have actually an ANC commissioner here. I don't think anyone's going to object to you. Like, people get much more extreme things supported and approved. And there was an ANC case that I sent you the case record for over on Oak Street, and it was something very similar where they had an existing deck, but it was kind of but they basically elevated it. I mean, you could almost copy that design. And I do see you've got some condensing boiler vents here. So
yeah.
I think my only thing is I really just recently built a porch in the back of my house, and we ended up doing a 10-foot porch. It's great depth, and we actually only had it span half the width of the back of the house, because we actually are trying to we haven't built it yet, but a basement apartment, and we didn't want to kill the light. But that's more of an aesthetic. That's a design decision between you and your architect, where we just went half the width of the house to not have some light there. I'm wondering, hey, Marshall, when they look at lot occupancy, if this is paved, are they already would that help her if the deck just covered half the back, or how does it work? How do they calculate the lot occupancy?
Well, lot occupancy isn't how much is hardscape versus open. Lot occupancy is how much built area covers the lot. It's percentage of built area. But to your point, I would consider both those vents as well as and these are just items again to consider for your own comfort. When you design it, the condensing units that are under the stairs now, those will throw off heat when they're on in the summer, as well as the vents, which whether that's a dryer vent or a furnace vent, just to be aware as far as your comfort when you do design it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the lot occupancy isn't permeable versus impermeable ground. It's built space versus open.
Got it. And Stephanie, could you clarify what, if you do build your current concept, what would the lot occupancy increase to?
If we did a 10-foot deck, I believe that takes us to about between 67 and 68%. We could build it a little shorter too. I think we can be a little flexible, but I think if you wanted to stay at 60%, it would be like 2 feet or something, not kind of quite worth doing. So.
Got it. Okay. Well, we can follow up with you. I mean, I hope you're getting some value. I just wanted to.
No, this was really helpful. Yeah, I'm very new to any processes like this, so this was really useful to hear some of the questions you guys asked and what you're thinking about, and we can look into next steps in the BZA process and get drawings set and stuff.
And you can reach out to me again, and there's probably a couple more examples. Like I'm sure if you want to go all the way across and go to 67%, I think the BZA proves that like every day of the week. Or, it's probably something that if you want to do that, it's just a matter of like, is that going to, and I actually hadn't thought about Marshall's comment here, like that will, although it'll be fine, I think, but I mean, it's, I understand what you're trying to create more livable family space for your family to be able to walk out and, and then I could even imagine you like maybe doing cool floor to ceiling walkout doors, French doors, like, it opens up a lot of options. But anyway, unless there's any other questions, I want to move on to the last item on the agenda. You're welcome, Stephanie. Okay, who do we have? Let me stop the share. And Rahul, do you want to present something? Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yes. Do you mind if I?
Sure, I'm going to promote you to a co-host, which should give you the ability to share your screen.
Okay. Can you?
I can see it.
You can see it. Awesome. All right, great. Well, I'll kick it off, and I know this is the only thing standing between you and the rest of your evening, so I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Appreciate that. So before getting into the presentation itself, I wanted to briefly provide some background on the union market TIF, so tax increment financing And then I'll get into the details of the scope of this work that I'd like to present today.
What, excuse me one moment. I got the TIF stands for what again?
Yeah, it's tax increment financing. So
Increment financing. Thank you.
Yep. So back in December of 2017, DC Council passed into legislation, which actually subsequently became law in 2018, which authorized the use of the tax increment financing, TIF for short, for, amongst other things, subgrade infrastructure improvements and above grade streetscape improvements within portions of the Union Market District. And as you can see on the screen, the area outlined in blue is what we refer to as Union Market District, bounded by Florida 6th, New York Avenue. And the area outlined in this kind of orange colors is the Union Market TIF area, right? So the entity designated to oversee and implement the improvements on behalf of the district, and which actually directly interfaces with the Deputy Mayor's Office of Planning and Economic Development and Office of Chief Financial Officer, is an entity called Union Market Infrastructure Corp, aka UMIC, which itself is comprised of representatives from Edens and JBGS. So I'm here today. I work for Edens, I work with Edens, for Edens, but I'm wearing my UMIC hat for purposes of this presentation today. So real quick, and I promise I'll get to the interesting stuff. In September 2021 was the first issuance of the TIF, and that captured a number of subgrade infrastructure improvements throughout the TIF area, inclusive of severely aged water and sanitary mains, and replacement of those components which benefited the neighborhood. And a component of the second issuance of the TIF, which we anticipate to occur mid next year, will actually incorporate some additional subgrade infrastructure improvements, but also for the first time above grade streetscape improvements, which is the purpose of this conversation today. So on the screen here is a sheet from a larger kind of civil set. You'll notice the area in green in particular is what we're focused on and what I'd like to kind of show you today. It encompasses portions of 4th Street, portions of Neal Place. This is 4th, this is 5th, Neal Place here, and then the alleyway system in between. And this area and scope is very deliberate and is part of a phased effort that's focused around the historic spine of the neighborhood, and in areas where we feel we can positively impact the ownership around the historic core. We're intentionally not touching areas and improving areas that would otherwise be captured by future PUDs, because those projects separately are responsible for taking care of those components. And also intentional about not touching areas in front of existing wholesale businesses, mindful of those existing operations as well. So again, the focus of this conversation, this presentation, is area green. The other areas, the other 3 boxes, incorporate the subgrade improvements that I mentioned earlier. So if you guys are familiar with the neighborhood and walk to and from the neighborhood and along the streets, you'll notice that Neal Place in particular has some particularly I don't know what the right word is, but obscene sidewalk conditions. This is an example of Neal Place between 4th and 5th, certainly not ADA accessible, certainly not pedestrian friendly. And then the alleyways as well certainly leave a lot to be desired, both in terms of overhead telecom lines, various debris and potholes throughout the space. And so what this image is here is a conceptual rendering of the improvements, again, that we're seeking to incorporate, including, and so this image shows existing conditions, but also future conditions, and I'll kind of walk through it quickly as well. So I mentioned sidewalk expansion along Neal Place and portions of 4th Street as well. Not only will that allow for an ADA accessible experience, but also improve the pedestrian experience as well, and assist with traffic calming measures generally. If you guys, again, walk and throughout the neighborhood, you'll notice people, you kind of take your life into your risk whenever you cross any street. And so expanding the sidewalks will certainly assist with, again, traffic calming measures in that respect. In addition to that, expanding the sidewalk allows for outdoor seating and activation opportunities as well, which frankly we're excited about. We're anticipating and proposing and coordinating with DDOT a curbless street section along Neal Place between 4th and 5th, which will actually allow for the ability to shut down portions of the street for activations. Think farmers markets, outdoor music, fitness classes, similar to what we do in certain other parts of the neighborhood as well.
What do you mean by curbless?
Curbless, so I don't know if I have an image, but if you're familiar with La Cosecha on 4th Street with the Latin Market, you'll notice, and actually, I do have a section that may be helpful. Yeah, actually, this is a curbless essentially means no curb. So you've got a trench drain, you got this kind of flush curb, and then you've got some sort of, whether interim conditions to as a visual cue, separating pedestrians from vehicular traffic.
Okay.
I think I've seen this down by the baseball stadium. I think some of those it's down by the baseball stadium now.
That's right. And you'll actually notice too, or maybe you'll be more mindful when you go next time throughout the neighborhood, that a lot of the new construction projects have incorporated this curbless detail. So it's something interesting and probably, not something you'd otherwise be mindful of, unless you're specifically looking at it. And then, as it relates to the alley improvements, the idea is to repave the alleys to actually underground. We've been coordinating with Verizon and Comcast to underground the telecom lines, and ultimately encourage the dual utilization of the alley, both for loading, but also outdoor seating, dining, and activations. We certainly have some grand plans for the alley and two-sided retail and restaurants who intend to utilize the alley for additional seating opportunities as well. So, again, an intent of what we're focusing there. I referenced some of the sections. So this is in a section of Neal Place. Again, the intent is to expand the pedestrian zones to 8 feet, certainly allowing plenty of room for people to walk and not have to kind of trip over hazards or navigate hazards as part of that process. 4th Street, the thing to note here is that the western portion of 4th Street is what I'll refer to as kind of the ultimate condition. And the intent is to take the eastern portion of 4th Street in certain areas as part of this phase and kind of marry the two into that kind of ultimate condition as well. And so the last thing I'll just kind of reference, is this is a conceptual rendering that was put together actually as part of the Union Market Streetscape Design Guidelines, which was created back in 2017 with DDOT and certain Union Market stakeholders, and again gives you a conceptual rendering, of ultimate condition of the neighborhood. So that's the thing after all the phases have been incorporated. But as you can see, this is a kind of section of 4th Street, expanded sidewalks, outdoor seating, outdoor dining, kind of activation for various businesses, tenants, as well along the eastern portion of the street. So, anyways, that's a lot of me talking. Happy to answer any questions, but really, this is an opportunity to again utilize the funding to improve again the pedestrian experience throughout the neighborhood, which certainly needs that improvement in activations in front of businesses, in front of tenants and owners, who are not developers. And so again, the idea and the intent behind the Union Market TIF has always been to kind of coordinate those improvements again for the betterment of the neighborhood. So I'll stop talking. I'll turn it back to you guys if you have any questions. Happy to
I have
address.
a couple of questions. They relate to you might say climate change, greening, things like that.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever been to Chester, England?
I have not.
There they have pavilions, some of which actually date from Rome and others from the 17th century, which extend out over the sidewalks. giving cover from the rain and other inclement weather. You have those canopies on one side that come out only partly. Are you planning anything that would allow extension on for example, summer days? So those sidewalks and whatnot can be more shaded?
That is a great question. And so maybe you're talking about kind
Because
of.
if you want people using them,
yeah,
you're gonna have to have more shade.
Yeah, that's a great point. The fortunate and unfortunate reality with a lot of the buildings within the historic spine, and I use that word with the capital H. Those buildings were designated a few years back as historic by the Historic Preservation Review Board, and so that severely limits your ability to, unfortunately, add those overhangs and canopies, as you mentioned.
Even ones that were retractable.
Yes, unfortunately, and it's certainly a conversation. We don't. When I mean we, I mean Eden's owns a few of the buildings within the historic spine. A number of businesses and buildings are independently owned. To your point, it is worth the conversation, and I think the other alternative that we've seen incorporate, we've had relative success, is actually included, umbrellas, freestanding umbrellas or seating.
That's another possibility. More trees.
Yeah, more. Yeah, and certainly that's been incorporated. And really, where we have the opportunity to do that, and for these new construction, having canopies, existing canopies with green features as well. We try to incorporate that. So, great points. But certainly, I think something we're always interested in tweaking to enhance that experience as well.
Because I think this city could be a great cafe city, but high summer you need to have shade.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Rose, do you have a question?
Yes. Hello, Raul.
Hello, Commissioner Rose. How are you?
Hey. With the widening of the sidewalks, is that going to disrupt any of the current or the longstanding business owners that live in that are housed or do business as far as deliveries and?
Yep.
Is that going to interrupt their business?
Great question. So the intentionality behind the areas where we are expanding the sidewalks are in front of businesses that are not existing or wholesale businesses. So these are either recently redeveloped or future restaurant buildings. And so we've been very, very intentional to that point to not expand the sidewalks in front of those areas, mindful of the wholesalers who load from the front, who use the front of the space, all those components. So the short answer to your question is that yes, or rather no, they won't be disrupting and impact the wholesalers.
Cool, thank you.
Rahul, I have a question.
Can I ask you that section, the road section again?
Yes. Neil Place or
really this other one is, and this is just I'm curious as to maintenance. Is the tenant zone that you have on either side, that's not tenant property, that's really still DDOT property that the tenant can use, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, these are all, the buildings are lot line to lot line. So everything, this is all public space in that respect. Sorry, I don't even know this is your question, but maybe I'll just keep on babbling. So the intent, behind calling it tenant zone in the streetscape design guidelines, the tenant zones are areas where adjacent tenants can activate it if they wanted to do outdoor seating or displays or the like. So that's the reason for its kind of reference to as a tenant zone.
And I assume that would also be tenant maintained by that same.
Yeah, absolutely.
They also have to maintain it.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they're responsible for trash. DDOT will, believe it or not, if there's trash accumulating, will issue a fine to adjacent businesses or property owners for not maintaining the front or even the rear alleys as well.
And can you talk a little bit about the flex zone? It looks like here you have plantings, other places it could be tables in that. What from that rendering it looked like.
Yeah, that's right.
Tables or different things.
Yeah, that's a cross section. So as noted on this plan, you can see certain areas have bioretention areas and trees. Other areas, again, with the flex zone, the intent is to allow for outdoor seating, for example. So again, I'm going to use La Cosecha as an example, and maybe this rendering needs to be updated to show some additional seating here. But the intent for the flex zone is to be able to utilize it for, again, outdoor seating or ultimately kiosks and other vendors to be able to sell, their goods as well.
So where it's not a bioretention or planting, it's essentially tenant space as well, or tenant used space.
That's right. And you would need to go, there's a formal process through DCRA and DDOT to rent the public space, and obtain the appropriate permits. But that would be the intent, correct?
Why are they, I noticed your numbers.
Sorry, Skip. Commissioner Rose still has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Raul, you mentioned that you all are going to do the underground wiring.
Yep.
Okay, so the poles that are there, they're going to remove all the poles that are there so that the sidewalks can be ADA compliant. That's right. Now,
the intent is to get rid of all overhead wires throughout the neighborhood. We're kind of actively engaged with Verizon and Telecom to do that. There's not the only poles currently are actually on the eastern side of 5th Street, which it's not shown on this plan, but it's very much part of this effort. The other coordination and a lot of the overhead wires are currently in the alley. That's the other part that we're hoping to underground. We'll basically underground it and have, stub outs behind each business for each property owner to be able to tie into, and actually in the process get access to upgraded internet service as well. But as part of that, and as part of the sidewalk expansion, allowing for more space, moving the signage out as well, that will be the ability to make it ADA compliant.
So if someone is in a wheelchair, they will be able to get out of their vehicle and be able to go onto the sidewalk with no worries.
That's right. That's exactly right. And as part of a larger effort that we're looking to, which is again separate from this, but all related to the neighborhood, we're working with DDOT to create called a curbside management plan to identify areas where in the future there'll be ADA handicap available spaces for parking as well. There's not that currently, so that's also things we're trying to coordinate for future as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Rahul, this is Kevin here. A question. Earlier, March of this year, there was a tragic accident up on Connecticut Ave Northwest where a gentleman had, I think, he had a medical episode. I don't know if it was a heart attack or a stroke. He ended up driving into a restaurant that had like patio seating and killed 2 people and injured 9.
Yeah.
So I love what you're showing, but I just worry about somebody just either through negligence or just through a medical episode. Like, what's going to keep people safe with the curbless design? I'm just.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question, and it's something we've worked through this with DDOT in coming up with these actual guidelines. So if you can imagine, if DDOT's comfortable, there's something to be said about that. But this is as you noted, or as mentioned earlier, this is not this is something that's already been in place, and certainly something that we're hoping to expand here. We've incorporated this into a project of ours, and I'm wearing my Eden's hat now at a Mosaic District in Virginia. If you've ventured out there, and obviously in the ballpark as well, and the wharf, there's components of this. The reality is, and the intent is, by incorporating traffic calming measures that'll force people to slow down, force people to be mindful of pedestrians, force people not to blow through stop signs, and as part of that effort or exercise, again, ensure, or as best as you can, because you can certainly never be 100% sure that won't happen. Discourage people from kind of blowing through intersections or barreling into that sidewalk condition as well. So, that's the unfortunate reality with outdoor dining. But we can do everything that we can to hopefully eliminate that as an issue, hopefully.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Could you go back to the one that showed the streetscape itself with the numbers? Thank you.
Is it this one?
That one.
This one? Okay.
I noticed that the flex zone on one side is 9 and 7, so you're taking space from the tenant. The question I have is why, instead of having them equal on both sides?
So the intent behind that is to allow, because you have a specific 90-foot right of way, and so you have to be able to fit parallel parking and 2 drive lanes based on their various size requirements. And so it's almost like you're working backwards. So you've got 8 feet for parallel parking, 11 feet for drive lanes.
I get that.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is that on the left-hand side, it's a 9-foot tenant zone and a 7-foot flex zone.
Yep.
On the other side, it's a 9-foot flex and a 7-foot tenant. So those numbers are flipped. So why are they 2 different sizes for the flex zones and the tenant zones?
Yeah, I think that might be a graphic issue.
You mean a typo?
A typo. That's an interesting note. Slightly embarrassing. So let me update that. But I think the intent
is really meant to be 9, 10, 7.
I think that's right. I can confirm that, but I think the intent is
that
to
would make more sense. Okay.
Yeah. But go ahead.
You can use it other ways, but it may also be a stormwater management deal where you need a wider. It could be longer, but it could have been intentional for stormwater management as well.
Okay.
I'll confirm. That's good. It's a good point. And at least I should tighten up my talking points. So I'll look into that. Thank you.
I did have one other question. You talked about the possibility of, permitting the area to close off the streets for events, I assume.
Yeah.
In that case, I was just curious, with that tenant zone, is that a part that would be closed off, or would the tenant be allowed to continue their operations with an event? I don't know that we need an answer now. It's just something.
No,
I guess.
Yeah, no, and again, in order to close off any alley, there's the whole DDOT process to do that. But the intent would be, either to collaborate with the tenants or and maybe the tenants is a part of the effort as well. But the idea would be to not necessarily impede their ability to utilize their space, their tenant zone. Again, if it's within their public space permit, they have every right to utilize that. But to add to it, and actually, I don't know if you can actually see my cursor or not. This portion of Neal Place is actually private road, and there's a restaurant here. This is La Cosecha. They'll have outdoor seating here, and often there will be outdoor fitness events or salsa classes or Zumba classes and everything like so. So both can coexist, at the same time.
Private road, interesting.
Rahul, in how many areas do they plan on doing the I forget how you describe it, but the flush curb?
The curbless. Yeah. No. So again, per DDOT's requirements for this neighborhood, ultimately in the ultimate condition, the intent is to utilize curbless throughout the neighborhood. Now again, it also the guidelines and DDOT also contemplates the fact that they're existing wholesalers, and so where those existing wholesalers are in place, the existing curbed streetscape will continue to be in place. So I would say the wholesalers at this point they're not going anywhere, and I don't think we want them to go anywhere either. And so what you'll see is this transition from curbless to existing condition, and again, much like the market, new and old coexist together, and that's what these guidelines account for.
Okay, and is there a specific ask of the ANC? Are you asking for? Is this just an informational presentation, or is there a request of the ANC?
Yeah, and so I'm glad, Commissioner Rhodes, that you've been able to make this, because the intent behind this presentation day is I think, and Commissioner Rhodes, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as an FYI, but ultimately we will present in front of the ANC and request a letter of support for a public space committee. And again, these are improvements, funded by the district for the benefit of the district, not necessarily for any specific development. And so kind of that's the nuance relative to typically when a developer comes and kind of presents in front of your committee hearings. This is actually a public improvement project, if you will.
Can I speak, or it's more of a question? I noticed something last time I was over in Sweden, which was a couple of years ago. In Stockholm, they have triggers now for people who go down the road too fast. And what happens on with like up where you have seating or something, they have these barriers that can rise. They come up out of the pavement, kind of like if you're over at Washington Harbor, where you have those piers and the clacks and sound of those walls rise.
Yep.
It's a similar idea. I've seen them happen. They put them in place after a bad accident about 10 years ago. And they have sensors that trigger if someone's doing more than, I think it's what we would think of as like 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit. And they trigger along the route the car's going, or truck, or whatever it is. And I think partly they're meant for public safety, but I also suspect that to a certain extent they're there for, other types of protective issues, if you get my drift.
Yep.
But is that something that DDOT has even thought about?
I certainly can't speak for DDOT. I'd be interested to ask them, and certainly will, given kind of the frequent conversations. But it'd be interesting to get their perspective on that. Certainly,
because that would probably address what Kevin was talking about with them being, if something could rise within seconds as something sped toward it, it would at least buy some time for people to get out of the way. I'm not saying just here, I'm talking elsewhere in the city too.
Yeah. I haven't heard of that. I've heard of that, but I haven't had that conversation with DDOT.
Skip, if you could send us, send me an email and I can forward to Rahud, that example from that community you said it was overseas that had something like that. I mean, that does sound.
I've seen them in action in Stockholm. I don't know who's responsible or anything like that. I've just seen them in near Circles Toye and where I think Basistan. I've seen them go up when vehicles went too fast down the streets.
Okay.
A large parts of Stockholm, central Stockholm now are actually blocked off to vehicles completely. So the barriers rise if someone goes down, starts going down the street they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So I do want to we have run 20 minutes over, but we had some really healthy discussion earlier on the zoning commission case and the Petco substation case. So I do want to wrap it up here unless there's any final questions for anyone in attendance. So Rahul, I really appreciate you coming tonight, and thankfully these are live streamed to the AMC's YouTube channel, so I'll send out some meeting minutes and I'll basically point so the other ANC commissioners can in their own convenience. Plus there's a whole new slate of ANC commissioners coming in next year, and so we can help even the new ones with say, hey, you should watch this is coming down the pipe.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate your time and your work. Thank you.
If you stop your share, we should get back to the gallery view. Perfect. Okay, I'm wondering who's left on the. Who was left? I believe a lot of our neighbors. We're down to 5 of us. Actually, it's just the 5 of us now. I was worried I was keeping a bunch of people up late, but it's just us. So I didn't need to. But that's okay. Yeah. But anyway, we should call it a night evening. But hey, I really appreciate it. A lot of actions come from this. We'll follow up with folks for our analysis of the transportation assumptions up on M Street Northwest. And I'm very happy to see there's already a Google group formed. They decided to call it the Pepco substation. And I actually already clicked the link, so you can join that group. And just to see, I'm hopeful they'll be able to use that to rally and organize on something, because I think something special could be built there. I mean, there could also be some homes for some special neighbors to live there. But it's a rare opportunity when you have can do something like that. So hopefully people mobilize. So anyway, with that, I am going to call it an evening. If anyone has any questions, I really appreciate it, and have a great evening and stay safe.